The snow fell heavy over Brooklyn that Christmas Eve, blanketing the cracked sidewalks and rusted fire escapes in a layer of white that almost made the neighborhood look peaceful. Almost. Inside apartment 4B on Fulton Street, Sarah Mitchell was on her knees, shoving clothes into garbage bags with shaking hands. Her two kids, Emma and Jake, sat on the worn couch watching her with wide, frightened eyes. Emma was 7, clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. Jake was 5, his Superman pajamas too small now, riding up his ankles. They had been asking questions all morning. Why are we packing, Mommy? Where are we going? Is Santa going to find us? Sarah had run out of answers that didn't involve tears. The eviction notice was taped to the door, bright orange and impossible to ignore. Final notice. Vacate premises by 6 p.m. December 24th. She had begged for more time, had promised the building manager she would have the 3 months back rent by January. But the manager, a nervous man named Tony who never made eye contact, had just shaken his head. His hands are tied, he had said. The new owner wants everyone out who is behind on payments. No exceptions. Sarah had been a nurse before the accident. Before the drunk driver ran the red light and took her husband Michael away, leaving her with 2 kids, a mountain of medical debt, and grief so heavy she could barely breathe. She had tried to keep working, but the hospital shifts were brutal and daycare was expensive. She had fallen behind on everything. Rent, utilities, hope. Now it was Christmas Eve and they had nowhere to go. The shelters were full. Her parents had passed years ago. Michael's family blamed her for the accident somehow, said she should have been driving that night instead of him. Friends had drifted away when she could not afford to go out anymore, when every conversation became about survival instead of living. She heard heavy footsteps in the hallway, multiple sets. Her stomach dropped. Through the peeling paint of the door, she could see shadows gathering. Then the knock came. 3 sharp raps that made Jake whimper. Sarah opened the door a crack. 5 men stood there, dressed in dark coats and expensive shoes that clicked on the tile. They looked out of place in this building where most people wore sneakers with holes and coats held together with duct tape. The man in front was older, maybe 60, with silver hair slicked back and eyes like polished stone. He did not smile. "We are here to make sure you leave," the man said. His voice was quiet, but it carried weight. Behind him, the other men stood like statues, their faces blank. "Please," Sarah said, her voice cracking. "Just give me until tomorrow. It is Christmas. My kids, they do not understand what is happening. I just need one more night." The silver-haired man glanced past her into the apartment. His eyes landed on Emma and Jake on the couch. Emma was crying now, silent tears running down her cheeks. Jake had his thumb in his mouth, something he had not done in over a year. The man's jaw tightened. He looked back at Sarah, and for a moment something flickered across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by that same stone expression. "You were told weeks ago," he said. "This is business. Nothing personal." Sarah felt rage bubble up through the fear. "Business?" she repeated, her voice rising. "You are throwing children out on the street on Christmas Eve and you call it business? What kind of person does that?" One of the younger men behind the silver-haired one took a step forward, his hand moving to his coat. But the older man raised his hand slightly and the younger one froze. "You have 2 hours," the silver-haired man said. Then he turned and walked away, his men following. Sarah stood in the doorway, watching them disappear down the stairs. She heard car doors slam outside. Expensive car doors, the kind that closed with a soft, solid thunk instead of a rattle. She closed the door and slid down against it, her legs giving out. Emma and Jake ran to her, wrapping their small arms around her neck. They smelled like the cheap shampoo she bought at the dollar store and something sweet, something that was just them. "It is going to be okay," Sarah whispered into their hair, even though she had no idea how. Even though her phone was disconnected and she had $17 in her wallet and the temperature was supposed to drop below 0 tonight. Outside, the snow kept falling, burying the city in white. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear Christmas music playing from a store, tinny and cheerful and impossibly far away. Sarah managed to pack everything they owned into 4 garbage bags and 1 broken suitcase. Took 90 minutes. A lifetime reduced to something you could carry in 2 trips. She dressed the kids in layers, every shirt and sweater they had, because she did not know where they would sleep tonight, and at least this way they would be warm. The building was quiet as they walked down the 4 flights of stairs. Most neighbors had already left for holiday gatherings or locked themselves inside, avoiding the drama of eviction. Sarah felt their absence like a physical thing, a loneliness that pressed against her chest. At the bottom landing, Tony, the building manager, stood near the mailboxes, pretending to sort through junk mail. He would not look at her. On the street, the cold hit them immediately. Jake started crying, the kind of exhausted, hiccuping sobs that children make when they are past the point of being comforted. Emma held his hand and tried to be brave, but Sarah could see her chin trembling. They walked 3 blocks to the subway station, Sarah carrying the suitcase and 2 bags, Emma dragging 1 bag, Jake clutching the last one and his stuffed dinosaur. People hurried past them without looking, everyone rushing somewhere warm, somewhere that smelled like pine and cinnamon and home. Inside the subway station, it was warmer but not warm enough. Sarah found a bench near the token booth and they sat. She did not know where to go. The Q train rumbled past, then the B, then the Q again. People got on and off, their faces buried in phones or buried in scarves. Nobody looked at the woman with 2 small children surrounded by garbage bags on Christmas Eve. Jake fell asleep against her shoulder, his face flushed from crying. Emma stared at the subway map on the wall like she was trying to memorize it, like if she studied it hard enough she would find a place marked home in big letters. Hours passed. It was dark now, past 8. The station attendant, a heavy woman with kind eyes, walked over. She crouched down in front of them. "Honey," she said quietly, "you cannot stay here all night. Transit police will come through soon and they will ask questions." "Where am I supposed to go?" Sarah asked, and her voice came out broken. "I called every shelter. They are all full. I have $17. That is it. That is all I have in the world." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She reached into her pocket and pulled out 2 20s. "Take this," she said. "Get them something to eat at least. There is a diner 2 blocks south that stays open all night. It is warm. The owner, he is good people. Tell him Diane sent you." Sarah took the money with shaking hands, unable to speak around the lump in her throat. The diner was called Sal's, a cramped place with cracked red vinyl booths and a counter lined with stools that spun if you pushed them hard enough. The windows were fogged from the heat inside, and through them Sarah could see a small plastic Christmas tree blinking on the counter, its lights reflecting off the chrome napkin dispensers. They slid into a booth near the back. A waitress with tired eyes and a name tag that read Rita brought them water and menus without being asked. Sarah ordered pancakes for the kids and coffee for herself, even though what she really wanted was to order nothing and save the money. But Emma and Jake had not eaten since breakfast and she could not watch them go hungry. Not on Christmas Eve. The food came fast. The kids ate like they had been starving, which maybe they had been. Sarah sipped her coffee and felt the warmth spread through her chest, the first moment of peace she had felt in hours. She let herself believe, just for a moment, that everything might be okay. Then the door opened and the cold rushed in along with 3 men in dark coats. Sarah's stomach dropped. She recognized them immediately, 2 of the men who had come to the apartment, and with them the silver-haired man, the one who had looked at her children and still said business. They walked to the counter and sat. The silver-haired man ordered coffee. He did not look around, did not seem to notice them, but Sarah felt exposed anyway, like prey trying to hide in plain sight. Emma tugged on her sleeve. "Mommy, that is the mean man from our house," she whispered. "I know, baby. Just eat your pancakes." But Jake had seen him too. And Jake, sweet Jake who cried at sad movies and brought home injured beetles to try to save them. Jake stood up on the booth seat and shouted across the diner. "You are a mean man." His voice cracked with emotion. "You made my mommy cry. You made us leave on Christmas." The entire diner went silent. Forks stopped moving. Conversations died mid-sentence. Sarah grabbed Jake and tried to pull him down, but he squirmed away, his face red and streaked with tears. "Santa is not going to bring you any presents because you are mean," Jake sobbed. You are on the naughty list forever." The silver-haired man turned slowly on his stool. His stone face was unreadable. He looked at Jake, at Emma who was crying now too, at Sarah who wanted to disappear into the cracked vinyl of the booth. The silence stretched out, painful and endless. Then the man stood. He walked toward their booth, his expensive shoes clicking on the linoleum. Sarah put her arms around both kids, her heart hammering. But when he reached them, he did not speak. He just stood there, looking down at them with those polished stone eyes. And for the first time, Sarah saw something crack in that stone. Something that looked almost like pain. If you are rooting for Sarah and her kids right now, stay with this story. What happens next will change everything. The silver-haired man pulled out his wallet. Sarah tensed, expecting him to throw money at them like charity, like guilt. But instead he sat down across from them in the booth, uninvited. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the way his hands had old scars across the knuckles. "My name is Vincent Castellano," he said quietly. "I own the building you were living in. I own 43 buildings in Brooklyn. And I have not celebrated Christmas in 17 years. Sarah said nothing, just held her children closer. Vincent looked at Jake, who was still hiccuping from crying. "When I was your age," he continued, "my father was killed 3 days before Christmas. Shot outside a grocery store in Little Italy. My mother, she had 4 kids and no money. We were evicted in January. Lived in our car for 2 months until she found work cleaning offices at night." He paused, his jaw working like the words hurt to say. "I told myself when I grew up, I would never be weak like that again. Never poor. Never powerless. I built an empire so no one could ever take anything from me again. And somewhere along the way, I became the man who evicts families on Christmas Eve. I became the thing I hated most." The diner was still silent. Even Rita the waitress had stopped moving, a coffee pot frozen in her hand. Vincent reached into his coat and Sarah flinched, but he pulled out a phone. He made a call. "Tony," he said into it. "The Mitchell family in 4B. Their rent is paid in full. 6 months advance. Put it on my personal account. Yes, tonight. And Tony? Anyone else in that building who is behind, you give them until March. No evictions. I do not care about the numbers." He hung up, looked at Sarah. "You can go home," he said. "Tonight. Right now. Your apartment is yours." Sarah could not speak, could not process what was happening. Emma was staring at Vincent like he had just performed magic. Jake had stopped crying entirely. "Why?" Sarah finally managed. "Why would you do this?" "Because your son is right," Vincent said, and something that might have been a smile ghosted across his face. "I am on the naughty list. Have been for a long time. And because 17 years ago, on a night like this, someone gave my mother a chance. A restaurant owner named Sal let us sleep in his back room for 2 weeks. This restaurant, this very building, he saved us. And I never thanked him before he died." He stood up, buttoned his coat. "Merry Christmas, Mrs. Mitchell." He nodded at the kids. "You two take care of your mother. She is tougher than any man I have ever known." Then he walked toward the door. But Sarah called out, "Mr. Castellano." "Wait." He turned. "Thank you," she said, tears streaming down her face now. "Thank you." Vincent nodded once, then walked out into the snow. They took a cab back to Fulton Street. Sarah had tried to refuse when Vincent's driver pulled up outside the diner in a black Mercedes. But the driver, a quiet man named Marco, simply loaded their bags into the trunk and opened the door. "Mr. Castellano insists," was all he said. The apartment looked different when they walked back in, even though nothing had physically changed. The same peeling paint, the same radiator that clanked and hissed, the same water stain on the ceiling shaped like a map of Florida. But it felt like home again, like a place where they belonged. Sarah tucked the kids into bed. Their small bodies relaxed for the first time in weeks. Jake fell asleep immediately, his dinosaur clutched under his chin. Emma stayed awake a little longer. "Mommy," she whispered. "Was that man an angel?" Sarah smoothed her daughter's hair back from her forehead. "No, baby. Just a man who remembered what it felt like to be scared." Emma thought about this. Like us? Like us, Sarah confirmed. After Emma drifted off, Sarah sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea, her hands wrapped around the mug for warmth. There was a knock at the door, soft this time. She opened it to find Tony, the building manager, standing there, looking sheepish. He handed her an envelope. "From Mr. Castellano," he said. "He wanted you to have this." Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note written in careful, old-fashioned handwriting. "For the kids. Christmas and some breathing room. No strings. BC." Sarah sat down on the floor right there in the doorway and cried. Not the hopeless tears from earlier, but something different. Relief. Gratitude. The overwhelming feeling of being seen by someone when you thought you had become invisible. On Christmas morning, there was another knock. Sarah opened the door to find Marco standing there with boxes. Lots of boxes. "Toys for the kids," he said, setting them inside. "And groceries. Mr. Castellano said to tell you he does not do charity, so you will work for this. He owns a medical clinic in Red Hook that needs a nurse. The job is yours if you want it. Good pay, benefits, reasonable hours." Sarah could not speak, just nodded through tears. Emma and Jake woke up to a Christmas they would never forget. There were no fancy wrapped presents, just toys still in their store boxes. But their faces lit up like someone had plugged them into an electrical socket. Jake got a new dinosaur collection. Emma got art supplies and books. And in the kitchen, the refrigerator was full for the first time in months. They spent the day playing on the living room floor, the three of them, while snow fell outside the window. Sarah made hot chocolate with real cocoa instead of the powdered stuff. They watched cartoons. They laughed. They were home. 2 years later, Sarah stood in the lobby of the Red Hook Medical Clinic, her nurse's uniform crisp and clean, her name tag gleaming under the fluorescent lights. She had worked her way up to head nurse, managing a team of 6. The clinic served the neighborhood, people who could not afford fancy hospitals, people who reminded her of herself not so long ago. Emma was 9 now, thriving in school, talking about becoming a doctor someday. Jake was 7, still sensitive but stronger, no longer afraid of every shadow. They lived in a better apartment now, one Sarah could afford on her own, with heat that worked and windows that closed all the way. But sometimes she drove past the old building on Fulton Street, just to remember, just to stay grateful. Vincent Castellano came by the clinic once a month. He never said why, just sat in the waiting room reading the newspaper, watching Sarah work. After her shift, they would have coffee at Sal's Diner, which Vincent had bought and renovated but kept the name. They talked about everything and nothing. He told her about his daughter, who he had not spoken to in a decade, who he was trying to find the courage to call. She told him about the nightmares she still had sometimes, about being back on that subway platform with nowhere to go. "You saved us," she said one evening, the diner nearly empty, snow falling outside just like that first night. Vincent shook his head. "You saved yourself. You kept fighting when most people would have given up. I just opened a door. You walked through it." On the 2-year anniversary of that Christmas Eve, Sarah brought the kids to Vincent's office in Manhattan. It was the first time they had seen him since that night, though Sarah had told them stories. Jake, now bolder, walked right up to Vincent's huge mahogany desk. "Are you still on the naughty list?" he asked seriously. Vincent laughed, a sound Sarah had rarely heard from him. "I am working on it, kid. What do you think?" Jake considered this carefully. "I think Santa gave you a second chance. Like you gave us." Emma presented Vincent with a drawing she had made. It showed their old apartment building with an angel standing in front of it. The angel had silver hair. Vincent's eyes got shiny. He cleared his throat and pinned the drawing to the wall behind his desk, right next to his business licenses and awards. "Best thing in this whole office," he declared. As they left, Sarah turned back. Vincent was still looking at the drawing, his hand resting on his desk like he was steadying himself. She thought about how one moment of compassion had changed 4 lives completely. His, hers, Emma's, Jake's. How choosing kindness over business had somehow made them all richer than money ever could. Thank you for watching this story all the way to the end. If it touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below telling us what story you would like to hear next. These stories matter because they remind us that we all have the power to be someone's Christmas miracle. We all have the power to choose compassion. See you in the next one.